Hello there, everyone, and welcome to GamePoints episode 353. Your weekly little get together. We talk about recent gaming news. As always, your host, Stephen Brown, and tonight we have to talk about what a big bag of dicks Monster Energy drink is. E3 is officially canceled, not even one day after I reported on last week, and the PlayStation VR2 sales numbers seem rather dire. But first, I want everyone here to know that this is an audience interactive podcast, so if you're watching live here at Twitch TV/GamePoints, or later at any myriad of video hosting platforms, be it Rumble, BitChute, YouTube, etc. Thank you for joining, and feel free to join the conversation with any questions, comments, concerns that you might have. Just try to keep them germane to the topics on hand. Furthermore, if you like what you see here, you know what streamers want when it comes to bits, likes, subs, all that good stuff. So, let's go ahead and roll out with the very first story here. This is one of those things I saw and just pissed me right off. Let's talk about this gentleman right here. This is a man by the name of Vincent Livings. Now, Vincent Livings is the CEO and developer of a very small indie studio called Glowlight, I believe. Glow Stick Entertainment. My apologies for getting that wrong out the gate. Now, they're making a game called Monsters and Mortals. And apparently, Monster Energy drink, the shit that comes in the green black can with the three triangle logo or the three prong logo that comes down like this, apparently thinks they own the colors green, black, white, and the word monster, and are suing this poor man because of his game named Monsters and Mortals. We'll go into what he says here, but this is one of those things that you just have to call out bullshit when it is. And I get that the way copyright law is written, you kind of have to be forced to defend your copyright or you lose your copyright. But in this case, there's no reasonable assumption that people can confuse a video game with an energy drink, let alone an energy drink who loves to put themselves in other existing video games. Death Stranding, I'm looking at you. This is copyright trollish behavior up there with Harmony Gold. It's complete and utter absurdity and needs to be called out. Let's go ahead and take it directly from the horse's mouth, however, from Vincent Livings here, and follow what his tweet thread says before we dig just a little bit deeper into it. From Livings' tweet, which the link to this and all the stories we'll be talking about today are going to be posted down there for you to read yourself. I highly recommend you always do that. To the tweet thread. It's a small one. It is well known that Monster Energy is a notorious trademark troll. Unfortunately, they're at it again. For a company that likes to target their drinks at gamers, they also like to bully and bankrupt game studios with lengthy high-dollar litigation. That is the crux of this, by the way. Monster Energy drink is significantly larger than an indie game studio. They know they can get away with just swinging their dick around. For example, you don't see them trying to do this shit with Monsters, Inc., a movie by Disney, or even with characters in other video games such as Kingdom Hearts. They only go after small targets or targets they think they can try to extort. By that, I bring up Ubisoft. We'll touch a little bit on them later. Monster Energy's lawyers are coming after us right now because Monster Mortals, that's the game that they're making, has the word monsters in it. They claim that our game is currently confusing to similar to their energy drinks. Yep, that's really their claim. Rather than roll over, I'm going to fight them in court. Congrats on you, Vincent Livings. I know that is going to be costly. I know that is going to eat into your funds for your upcoming game. I hope that you are able to at least recoup some of it, because you're not going to be able to get back legal fees, I doubt, from Monster Energy drink. But hopefully you're able to at least get not only some eyes on your game, but maybe a GoFundMe or something like that with defense. We'll see. I'll be sharing everything I receive from Monster Energy to give other game developers a look at their tactics in case they ever want to put the word monsters in their game title and have to deal with Monster Energy as well. They went after Ubisoft previously, too. And what that means is that, that game Phoenix, or Immortals Phoenix Rising? That was originally supposed to be called Gods and Monsters. But Monster Energy Drink, once again, pitched a fit, saying somehow a video game could be confused with an energy drink, and as such, their copyright applies. Once again, clear bullshit, but Ubisoft just kind of shrugged their shoulders and went, it's just cheaper to change the name, fuck it. I'm glad someone is pushing back. I just wish it was Ubisoft, who has the capital to do such a thing. Moving on. Monster Energy Drink is a bully that is owned by Coca-Cola. Do not support a bully company by buying their energy drinks. If nothing else, I hope they will eventually learn that going after game studios is not in their best interest. Boycotts typically don't work. Just sitting back and saying, hey, I'm not going to buy this, does nothing. Being loud, being bitchy about it, getting more eyeballs on it, doing the Streisand effect, certainly does. By the way, Monster Energy Drink sent this to him, making the following assertions if he wants to continue making his game. I'm not going to go over anything on here. Some of it makes sense. Like, for example, number 3, it says, hey, you can't use anything similar to the monster icon. Okay, that's fine. You guys designed that. That's okay. However, they are saying that you don't get to use the following words: monster, monstrous, monstrosity, beast, or unleash. You cannot use, let's see, where was the thing? Oh, here we go. You cannot offer to sell, marketing, promotion, distribution of any goods or services in the colors of green or white, in whole or in part, regardless of the background behind the marks, or in any color against a background that is principally black or principally green, or uses color combinations of green or black, or green, black, and white. What? You don't own colors, bro. You can say you own a very specific shade of color. For example, if you have something that, you know, that 255 color scale where there's like red, green, blue, and they each have a set number of 255. There's like an actual shade. You can trademark that shade in some very specific cases. I think. I am not a lawyer. Please don't take legal advice from me. I think you can then choose to pick a shade, but you can't. I don't think you can then just nebulously come out and say, "Oh, all green, all black." You just can't do it. What the fuck? And this is one of those things where I get the feeling Monster Energy Drink knows that they can't do this, but what they do know is that they are a huge corporation. This is an indie dev, so they get to push them around, which is why I'm bringing attention to this shit, because it is wrong. Fuck Monster Energy Drink. Fuck energy drinks in general. Like, I love me a Rockstar, but no way should I be drinking them. They are horrendous for you. Now, the good news is this story is going bigger and bigger and bigger. More outlets are picking up on it. And if you take a look at Monster Energy's social media, they're starting to get ratio just a little bit. Well, maybe not in that one. That's a bad example. But there are people who are going around calling them out. Let's see. Y'all are funny. Good luck trying to take action against Monster Hunter if it gets that far. It's a good point. Why aren't you going after Monster Hunter from Capcom? Capcom's bigger. Cringe, I used to like you guys trying to patent a word on the word monster. Used to love your drinks, about to find out about your ridiculously litigious nature and frivolous lawsuits when we buy a can again. There seem to be people actively going after this company now, and that is good. Let's just make sure that wasn't a fluke on one thing. Legally changed my name now to Monster. I'll be awaiting a letter from your lawyers now. A response from that right there. How are you going to sue indie game developers for using the word monster? Yeah, this is good. This is good. They need to be hammered. They need to be called out. I fully endorse anything along the lines of a, that's my Twitter feed right there. Where was I? Of what happened with limited run games, where I think if you look at their Twitters today, still people are going after them about the Carl Lynn shit, and rightfully so. Do not forgive, do not let companies get away with this shit. Call them out. Drag them. I don't want to even say politely, but don't go into the terms of harassment. Don't go attacking. Don't go making it oddly personal. Don't do things that can be contrived as harassment. But pointing out that you suck ain't harassment, especially when it is a corporation. I know that someone runs those social media channels. I get that, and it sucks to be them. Don't attack the person behind the screen. Attack the company. Because they need to be punished for such bullshit like this. It needs to make it hurt. They need to go through their dollar cost analysis and go, is it worth it for us to sue this person, considering the backlash we might get? And it needs to never be worth it for them. And a vigilant populace that's designed to keep them in check is the only way to keep that from happening. Call out these companies when they do this shit. Much like how on this show, I go after Tencent and I go after the Saudi Arabian fund, which will be brought up later in this episode, by the way. Even if it's just one person, all it takes is one to start it. All it takes is one to even at least let them know there's something here, because other people might see it and join in. So do not let douchebag companies like Monster Energy Drink, subsidiary of Coca-Cola, get away with this shit. Call them out by name. Don't do that coy little subtweet thing that people love to do on Twitter where they say, well, some company comes along and thinks they can... No, just say it. Just call them out. Anyways, rant over for the moment. There are other gaming things that I want to get into. Let's go ahead and move on to this topic here. What do I got next? This here via from Bloomberg. Sony PlayStation VR2 headset off to slow start as the Metaverse push sputters. Sales on this thing ain't doing good, and it certainly doesn't help that they're going into a wildly depressed economic situation at the moment. No one has any money to spend, let alone drop on a headset that seems to not have much support at all. I fully expect that this goddamn thing is going to go the way of the Vita in about a quarter of the time, which is a shame because the Vita was awesome, and so was the PlayStation VR2. But there is no support behind this thing. Not even developers are embracing it. Moving on to the article from Bloomberg here itself. Using an archive for Bloomberg, by the way, because they tend to paywall their shit. It's just what it is. To the article itself. The Tokyo-based console maker is likely to sell about 270,000 units of the PlayStation VR2 between its February 22nd release and the end of March, according to estimates from the research firm IDC. Sony had a lofty goal of making about 2 million units during the PS2 VR's launch window, Bloomberg News reported last year. So, launch window is a funny thing when it comes to video games. It really is nebulous and can be determined whatever is in the best interest of the company at the time. Sometimes launch window is only a couple of weeks. Sometimes it can be as long as a year. So when Sony says we expect to sell 2 million units of the PlayStation VR2 headset within launch window, they can justifiably say the first year. And there is precedent for that. So let's take that, let's Iron Man the argument, as it were. Let's assume that Sony PlayStation VR2 was supposed to sell 2 million units in a year. They have only sold a tenth, just over a tenth of that number. And video games aren't one of those things, typically, where you continue to add to your cells. Your cells growth accelerates. It tends to be it decelerates, where next month you'll sell less, and the month after that you'll sell less, and so on and so forth. The majority of sales come at launch. And by launch, I don't mean the year. I mean within the first couple of weeks. This has disaster written all over it if they have only moved just under 300,000 units so far. And I believe that's global, by the way. Back to the article itself. Chief Financial Officer Hiroki Totoki said at a Morgan Stanley conference that Sony is reasonably confident it's about surpassing the roughly 5 million sales of the original PlayStation VR goggles over the course of the PlayStation VR2's lifetime on the market. Which, in my opinion, those days are already numbered. Moving on. Mentioned that prior devices' previous performance would not make the current one a success, given Meta's more accessible and affordable Quest has surpassed 20 million sales per date, a report this month. The Quest is also having some issues, as the whole Metaverse idea in general seems to be just unraveling before us. No one cares. The tech still isn't there, and people really don't want to go plug into a virtual world where they get nickel and dimed even more, because that's all the Metaverse seems to be at the moment, is a massive marketplace to sell you shit that doesn't even exist. I love VR. I think the tech is awesome. This Metaverse shit, it's going to kill VR. It is killing VR. You're looking at it right now. Back to the article itself. Here we go. The PlayStation VR requires a PS5 console to play and costs $549, a price that's only going more onerous as economic conditions have worsened. So combined, you're looking over $1,000 or so after taxes and all that good stuff to play PlayStation VR 2, because you need the console too. So if you don't already have one, that's a high barrier of entry. IDC's Francisco Geronimo, Vice President of Data and Analytics, said the following. Meta has announced as a prize, that's what he said earlier. My apologies. Meta has announced a price cut on its Quest 2 in the meantime that will also impact sales of Sony's gadget. Geronimo said the following. I suspect that a price cut on PSVR2 will be needed to avoid a complete disaster of their new product, which, of course, puts early adopters in a fuck you situation. You buy this thing and not even 2 months go by and they cut the price on it. And how that's just going to alienate your fan base that bought it day one. Or you don't cut your price on it, Meta cuts their price on the Quest 2, and they proceed to eat your lunch on a device that's already significantly cheaper. And does kind of the same thing, because most of the PlayStation 2 VR2's launch library are just ports from the Meta Quest or the previous generation of PlayStation VR. There's nothing there. The one big title that they could have had to launch with that might have garnered attention was Half-Life Alyx, but for some reason, or maybe Valve just didn't want to play ball, they weren't able to cut a deal with them to get that over on the PlayStation VR 2. I want VR to succeed. I think it is awesome. I have a PlayStation VR 1 in this house. I don't play it all that often, though, admittedly, because it's a bitch and a half to hook up. This thing was going to be one cable, plug it in, good to go. You don't have to have a PlayStation VR camera hooked up to your TV. It was just going to detect all that. But for $550, no thank you. Especially since your support is so weak, and I get the distinct feeling I can find this thing for half that cost, if not lower, before the year is out, the way it's going. Furthermore, if you're on a PlayStation VR, if you're one of the people that ended up buying that thing, most of those games are incompatible with the PlayStation VR 2, even when they're the same game. So you have to buy it over again. This piece of hardware is fucked. And there's no nice way of saying that. Sony is screwed. And it certainly doesn't help to, and once again, I know I have beaten this drum over many shows over the past few months, but the fact is, the economy sucks right now. People don't have $550 to buy a PlayStation VR 2, let alone a PlayStation 5. It is going to be a very, very rough time for people ahead, and we're just now starting to see some of the damage from it. It is going to get progressively worse for everyone, especially video game companies. When luxuries start getting to get cut, video games are all those things that go bye-bye. It just is the fact of the matter. And they're trying to compare it to their COVID sales, which actually I think went, I need to look this up, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe when COVID and quarantine kicked in, you had video games spike because no one had anything to goddamn do. So when you look at your year over year, which investors do, it's going to be hit by the fact that they don't have the spike because of the quarantines, and they're going into a bad year. It is going to get real nasty real quick. And one of the things that I think is a victim of what's about to happen is E3. We go to IGN here for this next story. E3 has been canceled. Not even 24 hours after last week when I reported that Tencent and Ubisoft both pulled out of E3, along with Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, did the ESA and ReedPop come out and say, hey, E3 ain't happening this year. And no one was surprised at that point. To the article itself. Almost a year after announcing its return, the Entertainment Software Association announced today to its members that this year's Electronic Entertainment Expo has been canceled. IGN can confirm. Two sources have confirmed to IGN the organization announced the cancellation via an email sent out to its members today. The email simply said that while E3 remains a beloved event and brand, a beloved brand, get out of here with that shit, that the 2023 version simply did not garner the sustained interest necessary to execute in a way that would showcase the size, strength, and impact of our industry. E3 is permanently dead. Because if they couldn't garner enough interest this year, what makes you think they can garner enough interest next year? Or the year after that? This is over. 2019 was the last E3 ever. For in person, at least. The ESA might try to do something smaller like the Future Game Show, or maybe even try to make something rival Keighley's Summer Game Fest, where it's just here's a day worth of events. It's all video only. But I think that they're over with and done. I waxed nostalgic about E3 last show. I'm not going to get into it this show. The ESA concludes the email by reiterating its commitment to advocacy work. It does not mention undertaking the show again in future years. See, even they know they're not to bring that up. Don't go, we'll start playing FAN 2024. The brand's dead. Following IGN's report, ESA issued the following public statement from Kyle Martson-Kish, Global VP of Gaming at ReedPop. ReedPop sucks, by the way. They're the same people that run PAX and a couple other conventions out there, and they also own more than a handful of legacy media video game news outlets as well. To the article. This was a difficult decision because of all the effort we and our partners put toward making this event happen, but we had to do what's right for the industry and what's right for E3. We appreciate and understand that the interested companies wouldn't have been playable demos ready, and that resourcing challenges made by being at E3 at this summer are an obstacle they couldn't overcome. For those who did commit to an E3 2023, we're sorry we can't put on a showcase you deserve and that you've come to expect from Repop's event experiences. The press release adds that Repop and the ESA will continue to work together on future E3 events. Note they didn't say a live show. So like I said, I think they're going to try to do here's a day when we talk about upcoming video games and announcements, or maybe try to steal some thunder from Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest. Keighley, by the way, already flexing on the corpse of E3, and rightfully so, considering the massive missteps this company has had over the past half-decade. What more can I say about E3 that I haven't already when it comes to nostalgia and how I think in some cases it's going to be missed, but it really was irrelevant at this point. It was growing steadily smaller every year. Every year that went by, there was just fewer and fewer people showing up. Rocco, thank you very much for the sub. I do see that. Do appreciate having you here. It is vestigial at this point. Nintendo showed them away, and so companies are going to go that route. I think all conventions are actually on the chopping block when it comes down to it, including PAX, which is another ReedPop property. So we'll see how well PAX does in the future. But I don't think it's just the actual uselessness of E3 that made them cut it. As I've mentioned, the axe is going around because of the economy. Companies are trimming the fat wherever they can, and that does include EA, who, according to this article from CNBC, is laying off about 6% of their workforce. There's not a week that goes by on the show that I don't announce more layoffs, it seems. I think I've been doing it steadily since October. And something that I've also been steadily since October is that they are not going to stop. If anything, is going to get worse. To the article itself from CNBC, let me blow it up a little bit more for you. Electronic Arts is cutting its 6% of its workforce, equal to about 800 jobs, and reducing office space, the video company said Wednesday. As we drive a greater focus across our portfolio, we are moving away from projects that do not contribute to our strategy, reviewing our real estate footprint, and restructuring some of our terms, CEO Andrew Wilson wrote in a note to the employees. Layoffs are the most difficult part, and we are working through the process with utmost care and respect. There's part of what I want to bring up here. Reviewing our real estate footprint. That means they're closing down office space. That means they're going to be moving out of high-cost areas like Redwood City, for example, and leaving. Yet another blow to the Bay Area, which has been kind of a centralized figure in video game development. There are many companies that have studios. EA, Zynga was based in San Francisco. Facebook has a bunch of offices there. Twitter has a bunch of offices there. Ubisoft has a massive design there. A bunch of smaller teams also have set up there in or about the Bay Area. As the economy gets wrecked and as home prices have shot up and real estate's shot up, or home prices have shot up, home prices are going down. But as suddenly all these bloated rents start becoming impossible to maintain, companies are going to start moving out. They're going to start fleeing to states like Florida and Texas, where it's a little bit more business friendly. They're going to get the hell out of Dodge, leaving these cities, which are bastions of game developers, to decay even quicker. If you have the means, get out now while you can still potentially sell your house. I know that seems to be a bit hyperbolic, a bit hysterical, but I'm telling you, it is going to get worse. Back to the article itself. And the companies are abandoning these places, by the way. When the businesses start leaving, you need to be considering to follow them. When the rats leave the stinking ship, you need to start finding your life vest. Back to the article. The company expects to make impairment charges ranging from 170 to 200 million, according to a filing at the SEC. EA expects the actions associated with the restructuring plan will be substantially complete by the end of September. At which time you'll probably have a second round of layoffs, in my opinion, when September hits. Somewhere around then. I'm not a financial advisor. Do not take actual advice from me. But if I were to venture a guess, that would be a second round of layoffs. Wilson said that EA will provide severance and healthcare to the affected employees, and the layoffs had begun earlier in the quarter. EA had just under 1,300 employees, according to the quarterly filing in March 2022. In January, the company missed estimates and quarterly revenue and provided a bookings forecast that was weaker than expected. Chief Financial Officer Christopher Suh said on the earnings call that EA will be very deliberate with particular focus on pace of hiring. So it's going to be one of those things that not only are they laying people off, but they're not hiring anyone else, meaning that the current employees there are going to be working 10, 15, 20% more to cover for the fact that they don't have the staff anymore. This will affect game development, by the way. I'm specifically looking at BioWare with this one and how they seem to be in a never-ending rut with getting Dragon Age Dreadwolf out the door. Now, EA could be looking at Dreadwolf, the sunken cost fallacy, assuming that they've already sunk too many time and too much resources into the game to cancel it. That's all well and good, but there does come a point where EA is going to say, we either cancel it or you release it as is. And all I'm saying is be very, very cautious with your hype for Dreadwolf. Because when a company is under the gun like this, they are going to feel the pressure to get product out the door. And that means release it now, patch it later. And since the zeitgeist has turned against having DLC and microtransactions and all that stuff in your games, how games like Anthem and Avengers and the upcoming Suicide Squad even are taking merciless beatings over the destinization of the video games, the season pass, the living world stuffs. They're going to start cutting costs somewhere. So don't be. I would really drop your expectations for anything that anyone is working on right now that is being claimed as AAA. I expect a lot of shoddy product over the next few years. Back to the article. A company spokesperson declined to comment further on Wednesday's announcement or provide an exact number of job cuts. So that's all that I had on here. It's bad. It's bad, and it's going to get worse when it comes to the economic stuff. It's real bad. Thank you very much for the bits there, Outdoor Medic. We gotta love when gaming comics release half-baked games. Keep up the good work, my friend. Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. And yes, the ship it now, patch it later mentality has been a thing for a while due to various economic realities. It's just going to get worse. Games are way more expensive. The games are way more expensive now to make than they ever have been. And that is the fact of the matter. Plus, games are becoming less and less profitable as things go on. I know that everyone complains about the $10 hike going from $60 to $70 on new games, but it was $60 for the longest time. It didn't even keep pace with inflation. And then they finally were able to bump up to $70, and inflation, it jumps up so high it immediately eats that away. So that, they can't justify going up to 80. So the cuts and the trimming of the fat and the nickel and diming has to come from somewhere. And they can't really do it for loot boxes now, as companies are being banned from selling loot boxes in certain companies, and more and more countries are taking aggressive stances against that. You're starting to see a very negative backlash to the games as service style game when it comes to things like Anthem, Avengers. Destiny can kind of get away with it, but they're the big boy in the block. So same thing with Fortnite and Apex Legends, stuff like that. But Suicide Squad, what is typically a single-player video game, suddenly looking like it's, Fortnite? Or let's say Apex Legends. No. That's just not going to fly anymore. Which means companies need, if they can't add more ways for you to spend money on the game, that means they need to find a way to make the game cheaper. That means shipping out unfinished product. We'll see. Okay, moving on to the next story here. This is also via Bloomberg. Saudi Arabia is investing $38 billion to become a video game hub. I have gone on in great detail about the various abuses that the Saudi Arabian royal family has done across their country and the world in general. Let's not forget the fact that they killed a journalist who was reporting unfavorably among them, and just I don't need to rehash history. You all know my beef with the Saudi Arabian government and the royal family specifically, and how I'm loath to see them joining the video game sphere, buying companies like SNK, picking up I think 5% share in Nintendo, and starting to spread their influence and tendrils across this hobby that I love. Much like Tencent and the CCP in general, they are a company to be rightfully feared. Oh, excellent. Good to hear, Outdoor Mech. I'm glad that you are not going to be deployed. I need all the fans that I can get. I'll touch more on that on another time when the venue is appropriate. To the article here itself. The Saudi Arabian government is betting $38 billion on the country's potential to become the next hub for the video game industry. As part of its strategy to diversify its economy away from oil, Saudi Arabia, through its public investment fund, wants to become a big player in the $184 billion global gaming market. By the way, my own personal analysis aside, that is a smart move to do. You need to diversify your country's economy. When you rely on only one good, you get Venezuela. And there are worse bids to make than going into the video game industry for your investments, considering it makes more than Hollywood. It is truly impressive how much money video games bring down, so it is a tempting target for investment. I just kind of wish it wasn't such a douchebag company and douchebag royal family investing into it. Back to the article. After focusing initially on the esports industry, which has been struggling, the fund subsidiary Savvy Gaming Group is now looking to develop, publish, and acquire top-tier games and a support for the gaming industry in Riyadh. We are now more of an esports company than a games hobby, Savvy Chief Executive Officer Brian Ward told Bloomberg. Brian Ward, by the way, I believe once worked at EA for a long time. Could be wrong on that. Told Bloomberg News in an interview at Game Developers Conference, GDC which happened in San Francisco a week or two ago. What we're doing this year is focusing more on game publishing and development. Savvy's plans are an ambitious and crowded market where long-standing players like Electronic Arts are laying off employees, but the fund has already made a multi-billion-dollar investments in gaming companies like Nintendo, Tencent Holdings, and Activision Blizzard. It's funny that they bought into Tencent. Ward plans to leverage those connections to build Savvy's business. The country is rapidly... Where are we at? I cut off all the techno jumble here. Came to right to the end here. It's down here somewhere. Where are you at? Where did I have... Oh my god. No, anyways, I'm missing the part I want to talk about next. The country's rapidly increasing population of gamers led Ward, a former executive EA... The country's rapidly increasing population of gamers led Ward, a former executive at EA, Activision, and Microsoft Corp, to move to Riyadh and lead Savvy. He said the following. Part of our mandate is to help partners and other companies come to Saudi and choose Riyadh over some other place to establish a publishing business or distribution business to serve the region. In other words, they're going to start gobbling up development teams. More acquisitions. Now, I did read another article where he was asked, what about hiring LGBTQ people or minorities or even Christians in a country that's notoriously hostile to, well, at the very least, LGBTQ people and Christianity. And he said, oh, well, we have no issue hiring those people. It's going to be just fine. Bullshit. I call bullshit on that. Prove it. Go ahead. Hire a couple people from the Bay Area and entice them to come over to Saudi Arabia, and let's see how long they actually last. That country is openly hostile to that. So don't sit here and tell me that's going to be something that's going to be fine for you guys when we all know it's not. Here, you want to prove it there, Mr. Ward? Have your social media manager change your what is it? Savoy Studios? What was the full name of it? Savvy Gaming Group. I'm sure you got a Twitter account. Change it to Rainbow Flag when Pride Month hits. I dare you. And I don't mean just the American branch of it. I mean the actual Middle Eastern version of your Twitter. Because I know you're not going to. So don't sit here and lie to me when you say things like that, Brian Ward. Because we can call you, we can see it. We see it for what it is. This sucks. I get why Saudi Arabia is doing it. It's smart from a purely financial standpoint to do so. I think investing in video gaming is actually smart. I don't see it crashing anytime soon. I see it going through a massive downsizing, but you're not going to get like an early 80s Atari crash or anything like that where the industry almost completely collapses in on itself. There will always be room for gaming. You just might not have the megalith publishers floating around anymore. What are you going to do? I have said multiple times that you can't. If you cut out every game out there that has some kind of odious taste somewhere, you will play nothing. My solution is whenever I'm going to play anything that is owned by Tencent or owned by the public investment fund or has ties to some odious brand, is I'm going to play it and I'm going to call out those ties every time I do it. So, for example, when I play Metal Slug Tactics, when I do, I will be sure to have links to the murder of Khashoggi, the journalist that the Saudi Arabian government essentially executed for talking shit about the royal family, and making it people at least aware of how fucking horrible these people are. And I don't mean the citizenry, by the way, to be clear. I've met many people from Saudi Arabia, they're lovely people. I'm talking about, and many people from China, and they're lovely people too. I'm talking about specifically those in power. The CCP, the royal family. Fuck those people. Right in the ear. I have two delays I want to talk about, but one I'm going to get in a little detail about because it's kind of jacked up what's going on here. This article here is from Forbes by Paul Tassi, excellent writer in my opinion, especially if you like Destiny 2 content. He's probably your go-to guy for that. Arc 2 is delayed, and Arc 1 is being killed unless you buy a remaster. I'm going to give you the bullet points that he does at the very beginning of this. Arc 2, the sequel to the original Arc Survivor Evolved, has now been delayed to the end of 2024 after previously shooting for a 2023 release. They are remastering the original Arc in Unreal Engine 5 and calling it Arc Survival Ascended. When that game launches, they are switching off the original Arc Evolved servers. But this is not just porting players over as they wait for the sequel. They only to play Survival Ascended, and therefore any currently existing version of Arc is to buy a $50 bundle that packages the remaster with the now delayed sequel. Studio Wildcats confirmed there is no free upgrade path from the original game to the remaster for current orders. On top of that, it appears that you would have to rebuy the expansions for the original Arc as they are remastered for the UE5 version. Each DLC pack is about $20, and again, there does not seem to be any credit given to players who already bought versions of the last generation. So, to sum up, Arc 2 delayed. Arc 1 having its server shut down. They are re-releasing Arc 1 as a remastering, but you can't get that for free. The only way you can get that is if you buy it in a bundle with the already delayed Arc 2. Any content that you bought for Arc 1 will not carry over to the remaster of Arc 1 because they're shutting down the service of that too, and they're not letting you bring anything over. So, delay the game, still to shut the game down that people have paid for and are actively playing for right now. Force them to, if they want to play the content that they already have, but it's going to have a nice could have paid on there, to buy the delayed game. Did I mention that all of the DLC and everything else that you might have bought have to be repurchased as well? And this is one of the most dickish things I've ever seen a video game company do. And I've seen a lot of them. I would not even consider looking at Arc 2 until it is out and people have given it a shot. At the very least, the occasional Twitch player or a couple of YouTubers played it, because games like this tend to be fundamentally broken at launch. As such, there is no reason to pre-order Arc 2. As such, there is no reason to play Survival Ascended because you don't need to pre-order that. Other than if you want to play the shit you've already owned because they're shutting the servers down. However, The internet is full of intrepid and imaginative people. I would assume that somewhere there will be private servers of Ark running independent of the company when they shut down the servers, and I would do your best to find one of them. Do not give this company your money. As we were talking about earlier, the only way to ensure they get the message is to make it hurt financially. Make them feel the pain of your outrage. Do not buy from them. Do not patronize them. Find something else to enjoy. Do not reward this kind of shit. There is one more delay that we need to speak of. It's significantly less dramatic than that one right there. Deck 13 came out and said that Atlas Fallen has essentially been delayed till August 10th. Atlas Fallen, by the way, this is that deserty action RPG we've seen some trailers on. I really don't know more about the game beyond that. But it is getting delayed. It's getting moved to August. Probably a good idea getting out of the way of some major titles we got coming up. I just have zero interest in this game, so I have not been. I admittedly have not been keeping tabs on it. When it comes to action RPGs, I got Diablo 4 coming out soon, which does look like it's shaping up well. I am somewhat excited for it. That does not mean I've pre-ordered it. But you can be excited for something. Just keep your expectations in check. I remember when Diablo 3 launched. I was there. And those memories still very much burn brightly in my head. So I am cautiously hopeful for Diablo 4, understanding that that first week or so is just going to be a nightmare, and as such, don't pre-order it. I think that wraps things up here for GamePoints, and since that is the last story, that does mean it's the end of the show as well. Thank you all for showing up. This has been GamePoints episode 353, and if you like what you saw here, feel free to share, like, follow, sub, throw bits at, all that good stuff. I do stream the show live every Tuesday around 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time right here at twitch.tv/GamePoints. Feel free to drop on by and say hi. Many of you do. Outdoor Medic, Rocco, and to everyone else who's lurking, I do appreciate your support of the channel. If you can't watch us live, however, I do put this up on any myriad of video platforms, be it Rumble, BitChute, YouTube, etc. And there's also a Discord server that you can join, link provided down there somewhere, with all the stories that we talked about today as well, if you want to read them on your own. You can follow me at CapitalistPig21 on Twitter. And like I said, come on by twitch.tv/GamePoints for various games streaming throughout the week. I won't be here on Wednesday because I have many appointments that I need to keep tabs of, but I will be back Thursday to play something. Probably the Great War. That World War I game Patrick Gulf made that just came out. I know it's not necessarily getting reviewed too well, but it's a strategy game set in World War I. How can I refuse that? Anyways, thank you all for showing up. This has been GamePoints, and until next week, I'm out of here.